Back to the set review. We're on to Emerald here, and Cricky, the Lucky Cricket, one of my favorite characters from Mulan, is big. I don't know how he's so big, but he's big. 5 cost, 3/4, inkable, Cricky, Crikey, basically the same thing. It's 3 lore, which is huge for a 5 cost. We've seen that in Cusco in set 1, and while this doesn't have ward to kind of benefit itself that way, the ability to give other characters of yours, especially Emerald ones, which don't have typically too much strength, is a huge boon to a lot of those decks typically falling short on being able to deal with locations. So this helping deal with locations there is pretty huge. I think this card's very solid, and it's a sizable body. Yes, it gets hit by Medusa, but hopefully the Ender's Play effect really gives you the benefit there of playing a card like this. This one's getting a solid 4 stars. I think this one's one of the more powerful Emerald cards we have in the set, and it'll really change the texture of how you view your opponent with an Emerald board, kind of just sitting there and not being able to challenge your characters with like Herkimer folks or Flynn's or some random Ursalas that are sitting around the 2-cost Ursula. Super strong card to really have access to, and being inkable is just fantastic. And also 3 lore. Why does this have 3 lore? I don't know. Might it still see play if it was 1 or 2 lore? Maybe, but at 3 lore, solid card. This is one to look out for. Obviously, there's if you can bounce it, that's great. If you can't bounce it, that's fine. It's still just a strong card, and big fan. Gonna try it in a lot of different decks. Just being able to combat some of the bigger characters as the game goes on. Tamato is no problem now, and locations are a thing of the past, basically. So we'll see, but super big fan. Nice card. All right, next card up is Diablo. Diablo is an interesting one. So the shift is something that you can do and not always need. The 1-cost Diablo, which we'll get to in a minute, kind of plays into this. So whenever your opponent draws a card during their turn, and this is exerted, you draw a card as well. So if they play a friend on the other side and you have this tapped, you draw 2 cards as well. If they draw for their turn and this is exerted, 2 cards as well. Or 1 card as well, I should say. They play a Popsicle, this is exerted, you draw a card as well. Flavor Sham, you draw 2 cards. Really powerful there, right? There's a lot of situations where this is going to be great. And even just being able to play this on 3 and then, quest with it on turn 4, kind of the worst case scenario where you don't have anything to shift onto, because the shift options are honestly not that great. And it does require you to have the 1-cost Diablo in play and have an action to discard. You do functionally get the card back by discarding the action from having this be exerted in quest already. My only concern is if it's going to be able to be removed pretty easily. Evasive, that plays into that line pretty well. And it being evasive definitely helps it survive more than 1 turn potentially, so you can get more than 1 card out of it. It does die to a card like Storm Rage on, and I've looked into the rules of it and how it works out. If this gets stormed, you still do get the card off of their storm, because the effect to draw a card of theirs gets put into the bag, and then state based actions are checked, and then this dies. So then your effect happens afterwards. So if this is exerted, your opponent plays the Storm Rage on, sings it with their Cinderella or whatever, kills your character, draws a card, you're still getting the card from their turn, and as well as the card off of their storm. That's probably why this thing has 2 health, so that does die to cards like that. It is pretty fragile. It doesn't really brawl too well with cards like Minnie Mouse if they have a crab to back it up, or any other evasive characters that might be played at some point in time. It's also uninkable. Uninkable is pretty big. You're playing this in competition with cards like Ursala and cards like Prince John, which Prince John has a similar type of effect just to gain some kind of advantage. But I think this card might be Snowball a bit harder than Prince John and also doesn't ask anything of you. This one also is going to be, I think, 4 stars for me. I'm a little hesitant to make it truly 5 because I think it is very powerful and potentially very scary. But it's not quite there because of its uninkability. And potentially going second, it's not going to be always the best play. Except if you can shift onto it. And right now, even with things like that, does not have the best shift targets. There's 2 right now with the set release, and they're both kind of medium. They're not exciting to me, but the card certainly has a lot of potential. It is a Floodborn for cards like Bucky, for cards like Blue Fairy, if you play those colors with it. All of the 3-cost characters that are Floodborn do have a high upside with Blue Fairy and Bucky. I'm not going to really mention those much more. I might nod to it, but they all have the upside of being evasive or being Floodborn characters that trigger those effects for added bonuses. But yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out. Imagine where you go 1 cost Diablo, turn 2 Bucky, and also turn 2 shift with my Diablo, shift quest with it, and then shift onto it, so that they discard a card, and now I'm going to be drawing cards. And I know their hand because rolling right to the next one, Diablo. Maleficent Spy is a 1 cost 1/2, not good stats. You get a look at their hand, so you kind of know whether or not your Diablo is going to be sitting there doing something there. So you kind of get some information as to know if your Diablo's going to be good, or if you have to wait to maybe not shift this on turn 2, or even if you need to play an Ursala out to take a action out of their hand before playing your Diablo out. But it's reasonable. It's not fantastic, but it's a good card. This one's going to get a 3 only because it's shiftable. Yeah. Come here, buddy. Come here. Sorry, my cat's joining the party here. He's being a little sad because he wants to play with the laser. Anyway, yeah, this card's fine. Only because of the shift. Otherwise, without the shift target, this would be a 1 or a 2, really. But this is one of our best options right now. The other one that exists that is in set 3 is a 2/1 that when you play Maleficent, you can look at the top card of your deck and put it at the bottom. Not ideal, but this one might be a little bit better because it survives cards like Tinkerbell if played late, and it'll let you kind of know if your other Diablo is going to be fine ahead of time. So yeah, those are Diablos. They're pretty strong, but we'll see. Moving on, Gunther. Sorry, 1 second. Come here, bud. Here we go. All right, brought my cat up here because he's whining a bunch. Gunther, I think has a drawback. I'm giving this card a 2. 4 cost 3/3. Whenever it's challenged and banished, they return one of their characters to their hand. What if it was a card that you don't want them to return? Anything that may challenge and survive, or they have like the ability to challenge this. They play a Mim Rabbit before doing so, and then they just pick the rabbit up, and you've given them more cards. Not necessarily an upside, maybe a 1. Not a very good card. Yeah, not much to say there. All right, Gus, Eater of Cheese, Champion of Cheese. Vanilla 2/3, no shift targets, solid 2 3s for 2 are fine and limited, and that's all she wrote. There's nothing really to say. Cool card. Hades, all right. A lot of German text here. Can't read it all, but basically what it does is you can exert this character to play a character with the same name without paying its cost for free. Purring through the mic, fantastic. There you just know he's happy. This one's pretty cool. It's a definite build around and requires you to have a lot of small characters that kind of go into bigger ones. What you doing now? All right. He wanted all that purring and petting, and now he's just leaving us. All right, see ya. Yeah, okay. One of the best things to try and do with this thing, I would think, is play a Stitch New Dog and then put a Surfer Stitch into play without paying its costs. That's a pretty big upside. Also, Ursala, whether it be the new Amethyst Ursala, you can play pretty quickly. You could shift it on the same turn, you would do that, but you also can play this Ursala, which I actually have a bunch of right here, the Power Hungry Ursala, off of your 2-cost Ursala, which, Emerald Amethyst is a nice color pair that might make use of this. Dying to a lot of the Ruby cards is a little unfortunate. I'm giving this one a solid 3.5. It's a build around that may or may not be good enough, may get there too, we'll see. Goofy, yeah, the 10-cost Goofy, and Mickey Mouse potentially in Ruby Emerald. Our Brave Little Tailor could be played off of it. A lot of things you could do. Whether or not they're all worth it, and whether this card's going to survive the turn, not certain. And I believe it does say another character, so I'm not certain you can play the Amber Hades off of it, but I have to look at the exact wording for it. But even then, the rating doesn't really change too much for me. It's inkable, so it's pretty free to try and build around and not feel stuck when you don't have the pieces together, so we'll see. All right, hey, again, not all the languages here from my side. What this does is when you play it, if your opponent has more ink than you get to put the top card of your deck into your inkwell face down and exert it. So it is essentially a Mickey Mouse from set 1, the 1/3 that puts the top card of your deck into your ink, but only if they have more ink than you do. However, this is inkable, and it's 2/3 and 2 lore. So it's 3 cost 2/3 for 2 lore is pretty much baseline for being playable. I think it's pretty reasonable because Benja gets a lot of play, and a lot of times it just doesn't it doesn't hit an item from your opponent because not every deck plays items, but we still play Benja because 3 cost 2/3 2 lore is fine. It's not amazing, but it's fine. But this card's pretty great, comparable to some Magic cards, similar to cards like Knight of the White Orchid. I'm giving this a 3.5. I think it'll help a lot of Emerald decks kind of keep pace with some of the more ramp heavy decks and not have to throw away some resources inkwell wise, and it's a reasonable threat. Pretty excited to see this see play. 3.5 stars is where it's going to be. Fine card. Definitely will see play. Hera, Queen of the Gods. Ward. Your character's name Zeus, get ward. Your character's name Hercules, get evasive. So it protects Hercules and Zeus. Kind of cool. 1/3 with ward, so it'll live, all the time basically. It's not. I haven't seen enough Zeus and Hercules even with this set to really warrant something like this. It's fine, but not something to be too excited about. Maybe there's an Emerald Steel deck that wants to play Chipped Hercules, and it does have resist, but it was always vulnerable to cards like Maui and also Along Came Zeus, oddly enough. And this protects Zeus from things, but not Hercules, so we'll see. I have a hard time seeing this build around really coming through, but at stats line of 3 cost 1/3 2 lore with ward, fine. It's a little bit better than, or a little bit worse than Prince John as far as its effect goes, but it is inkable and has more health, so could be fine. Not too excited, but definitely a fun build around. Middling card. Jacques. All right, we have Jacques. 3 cost 1/4 2 lore. The important part there for me is 2 lore. When you play this, something gets reckless during their next turn, so more emerald cards that give reckless, much like set 1 we had forgot which of the 2 crooks from Dalmatians had this type of effect when it quested. It was a 3 cost 2/4 with 1 lore that when it quests it makes something else reckless next turn. But more things giving reckless I do like. It's kind of embarrassing to see this card and also have the set 1 action that gives reckless. So when you play it, because this you get a 1/4 body that has 2 points of lore as well. So a little bit of power creep, but that card we all knew wasn't very good to begin with. But yeah, comparable to Lyle, which gives reckless and has the ability to make your opponent lose lore. That one only has 1 lore versus this having 2, but this has 1 power versus 2. This is inkable, that one's not. I think this one's a solid role player. I think I do like the ability of Emerald to kind of prevent people from gaining lore. I think this one's also 3 stars. Solid card. I don't mind it. It definitely is good and limited, I'd imagine. I think that it constructed is almost there. And if there's enough incentive for people to be kind of fighting opposing decks, cards like Flavorsham and Tamatoa are pretty contingent upon questing. And we talked about the Gaston, the new Amber Gaston versus Doc. One of them has to quest to get the effect. One of them can exert to use the effect without questing. Kind of gives more of a reason to play Gaston over Doc. And this is one of the cards that kind of adds to that debate. So interesting card. May see play. Close. It's close. All right. Jasmine. I don't know the rest of Jasmine's text there on her name, but when you play this or when it's challenged, your opponent discards a card. So it's kind of a mini Lucifer in some ways. It's also uninkable. It's a little bit bigger of a body. I do like that it's a bit bigger of a body. It makes it not just die to a fox, which is one of the primary cards to be kind of a baseline stats against. It trades with it versus just dying to it. It's close. I'm not sure which one's better, that Lucifer or Jasmine. Lucifer definitely works with cards like Bibbidi Bobbidi Boop a bit better, just being able to empty your opponent's hand all at once. This one's more of a value. You want to stick and play and quest with it a bunch, where Lucifer was more of a kind of a you slam and then the game ends kind of thing, or they lock out all their cards in hand. This one's fine. I'm giving it 3 stars. It could see play in the right deck. There are many better options, I think, at 5. Maybe 2.5 stars. Uninkable is a bit rough sell here, and I do think Lucifer's better, but there could be a situation where this seems play. But Cricket's better than this. I mean, there's a bunch of 5s now that are in Emerald that are all 2 or 3 lore and have some kind of benefit to it, and maybe enough, but maybe not quite. All right, next up, Meara, Captivating Cynic. When you play this character, choose and discard a card or banish it. Now you get kind of upside for having to discard a card. And that's the big body, the big booty body. Yeah, the flavor says it all. With love, there's always a catch. And the catch is this is going to die to Medusa pretty poorly. It's a cool card. I do like that they've made cards like this exist. When you play it, discard a card. There's a lot of kind of interesting play to things like that. The stats are pretty great. The 3/6 and 2 lore is nice. Uninkable kind of is bad because you can't not play this card when you don't have the ability to discard a card. I almost wish it had said you must discard a card and not the banish part, so it's kind of cool as the last card being played. You play this as your last card and you didn't have to pay the cost. That'd be cool. But as it stands, it's a little bit too much to ask. In limited, it's probably fine. This is getting a 2.5, uninkable, and not being able to play this as your last card is kind of rough. But yes, it's okay. It's just not my cup of tea. Yeah, I like it though. I like the card, but I'm not certain we'll get there. There's not enough incentive for being empty-handed quite yet. All right, Meara, liberated one. 5 cost 4/4 ward. Okay, 5 cost 4/4 ward. Quest for 2. Okay. Whenever you play a character named Hercules, you may ready this character. It doesn't say it can't quest again. This thing, much like Beast Relentless, has the ability to gain a lot of lore quickly. You can kind of sandbag some of the, I believe, cheapest Hercules is the Steel 2/3, and just kind of use those if you are able to hold them till after playing this to maybe just gain 6 lore the turn after you play this. This one's close. This one's close to getting there for me. 4/4 in ward is pretty big. It doesn't get challenged that well. I mean, Maui, of course, but it's a solid character, and you can also leave it on defense there, and Steel and Emerald have the way to basically remove characters of your opponents or take cards out of their hand with Ursala to protect against a beat prep. This one could see play. I'm giving this one 3 stars. It's close to being a little bit more than 3. I don't think quite 4. It could be a really cool build around. I'm excited to give this a try. I'm going to try it to see if that kind of deck could work. Maybe Emerald Steel, or, the Hercules seem to be predominantly, there's the 2 cost 2/3 from set 2 in Steel, so that's what I'm going to try pairing it with the most. You can use this and to sing Whole New World and then play Hercules after it to untap and keep going, much like Beast Relentless. But having Ward is huge. This is an extra line of text. I'm not sure the card needed to be potentially cool, but it's got it, and that's really what pushes it for me. So I'm excited to experiment with it. Could be good. All right, Pain. Painfully, or not very much, 2 stars. We've seen the stat line, fine for limited, not exciting. The support with Pain and Panic aren't really there. Much like that, Panic, well, this character is exerted. If you have a character named Pain in play, your villain characters can't be challenged. So, yeah, I mean, this is not a villain. So it can't protect itself, which would be cool. But also 2 stars for here. It's weird. This is an ally, and like, is this a... No, neither of them are villains. So I'm confused by the villain synergies and them not being villains. Obviously, that'd be a little bit too good, probably, with that line of text. If it was questing, if you had that in play, neither of them could be challenged. That'd be really, really good. But it's odd that they are villains, right? I mean, I don't know. But they're cute cards. Not great, but fine. All right, let me do this in backwards order. So Pegasus, 1 cost 1/1 evasive. Yeah, this is Pascal, but Pascal with no conditions, which Pascal never really had a condition. I don't think anyone's ever challenged Pascal successfully against someone who's very good at fighting things or didn't top deck a way to clear a bunch of things. But if they're going to clear a bunch of characters in play, then this is likely getting swept up in the matter too. 1 cost 1/1 evasive, solid. 3.5 stars for playability. Not too exciting. It's just an evasive character, but Pascal seeing play as a 1 cost 1/1 that can sometimes gain evasive, most of the time evasive with some contingencies, but this is slightly a bit better in Emerald, which is kind of cool, and plays really well with one of the better cards, which I first mistook for a super rare. When I first saw it, I'm like, oh, this is almost like a Kita, but in Emerald's way of doing it, because it is a shift 3 that can shift onto a 1, which Kita is basically that, and it offers some protection from your characters. If you shifted this into play, all your things get evasive until your next turn. This card is huge. This card is really powerful, I think. Not only is it a 1 and a 3 you can't really challenge into, this might make many decks that are not viable. This is a 1 into a 3 shifting wise that can sing Whole New World and can't be challenged on the way back down. They can't play a Fox and clear this off if they have any kind of board, which is not something that can be done with a card like Queen, the 5 cost Emerald Queen. This can sing, we don't talk about Bruno, which we'll get to. This is an incredible card. I'm actually, again, I thought this was a super rare in rarity here or higher, because it's an incredible card. It protects your curse folks. If you have the nut in some way where you go, Pegasus into double curse merfolk, into quest everything, shift this, they can't challenge your curse folks. That's, I think at that point we're at 9 lore, and then they have to deal with all your things still. This card's getting a solid 4. It's very strong. You'll notice I'm giving 4s as baseline. The highest 5s are really the best card to be seeing. 5 is Mim Fox. Let's start there. Mim Fox is a 5. That card is one of the few ones. A Maui is a 5. Those cards that are defining the entire metagame are 5s. So to get higher than a 4 is really hard. And this is close. I think this is a 4. I don't think 4.5, but it's a solid 4. I'm very scared of this combination, Pegasus and Pegasus. They're very strong. But yeah, incredible. I'm kind of shocked again to see that this is just uncommon. To be honest, so it's just crazy. Yeah, big fan. All right, next up, Pete. A card that's a super rare that I have no idea why it's a super rare. When this character quests, while it have 5 or more strengths, you have to buff this by 3, which is kind of Pete's thing, getting more strength and then getting a bonus effect for it. You get to return a character with 2 or less strength to the player's hand, yours or your opponent's. Yeah, weird. I don't quite get it. 2 cost 2/3 is fine. At Inkable, uninkable, it's not really okay. And I don't know how we're buffing this too well. There's not been too many free ways to buff in this game where, like, okay, it makes sense to do this with this, and usually it's an item or another character in play. This is, I mean, a 2 at best, maybe lower. Honestly, in rarity, this should have been shifted with the Pegasus. Perfectly honest, they'll swap the rarity and it makes sense. Crab doesn't really work with this card. Cricket does, I believe. I'm not sure. Crab is Challenger, and this is having to quest, so it doesn't work with any kind of Challenger buff effect. So it's not 1.5. I don't know. I'm confused. But in my confusion, I'll move on. Pete Rotten Guy. Yeah, nothing to look at here. 1/5, fine for limited. Nothing to see here. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Again, I'm not a big fan that the spoilers have the people's things on there. So this is a shift 6 evasive shift onto Prince Philip, which I don't remember all the Prince Philips. I know there's one we're going to see next, but when this is played, I believe it's when it's played, destroy or banish all damaged characters. I don't know if I still haven't seen the official thing on it, if it is when this is shifted, much like we saw the Amber Mickey Mouse have to be shifted to get the effect with Bodyguard to draw cards. But if it's not when it's shifted and it's just when it's played, even at 9, this is potentially powerful. I mean, hitting all damaged things, you don't need to be playing steel. Most characters are going to have damage on them just through challenges. And if you can make that happen, even at, I mean, it's almost like it's not quite a Maleficent, right? It's not destroy anything. If it's just when it's played for 9, if they have a damage on it, it can just kill something. So I'm getting some confirmation in Twitch chat, which is going on here. There's that it can be, it is just when it's played, not when it's shifted onto. So it's not bad. Cards like Chief Bogo that AoE damage everything for 1, or other cards like Tinkerbell or Grab Your Swords. I was really wondering if there was a card, a Prince Philip, that cost 5 to shift onto, because this is shift 6. But the reason I'd want a Prince Philip that costs 5 is so that Prince Philip can sing Grab Your Swords, and then you can just shift on top and clear everything. The fact that you can't do that, I think the only Prince Philips have 4 costs, is a little bit unfortunate because those can't sing Grab Your Swords. But yeah, this card is potentially pretty good. I'm giving this 3.5 because it is expensive, but it's potentially powerful. It's, again, comparing it straight to just Maleficent Dragon. Most characters late in the game can have some damage put on it. And this one is not going to be straight just kill something, but it's going to be close. And yeah, strong card. And yes, you can Bogo first with playing both those out. Since you control both effects, you can choose to have Bogo's resolve first and then have this one resolve. So Chief Bogo is an uninkable 4-cost 2/4 from set 2 that when you play a Floodborn character, deal 1 damage to all your opponent's characters. So this can potentially just be a one-sided board wipe, which high upside, and it's inkable. So again, could see a ton of play. I'm excited to see what comes of it. Not a 4 because it's a little bit expensive, but we'll see. Prince Philip, Warden of the Woods, 3/4. Your other hero characters gain Ward. Notably works with set 1 Cinderella, that is the Sapphire 3/5 for 5. That gives you other characters Ward. So those two in tandem, since that is a hero, I believe, I'd have to double check, protect each other, and then giving all your characters Ward in that sense is pretty strong. Uninkable 3/4, I'm not too sold on it. It's getting the 3 stars because it's potentially good with that Aurora, not Cinderella, sorry, and from set 1. It's potentially playable. I'm not sold on it in the Sapphire colors, but with the with Aurora in set 1. But yeah, this is okay. 2 of these in play, all your hero characters complete itself are fine. But again, 2 4-cost uninkables is rough. Yeah. the Fates. When you play this character, look at the top card of each opponent's deck. I mean, it's kind of funny because like you can Ursala your opponent and then play this, and then you know that they can't be prepared you next turn, right? You absolutely know. But I don't feel like this card is worth the effect, or the effect is worth the card in full. We'll see. I'm not certain. But it's a potential 2-star card. Role player, maybe good, maybe not. All right, the Muses. So Ward, 2/4. Okay, Ward is interesting. When you play a song, you can return something with 2 or less to the player's hand. Potentially really good. This is going to get a 3.5. It's a build around, but it's a pretty strong build around. If it quested for 2, it would be a 4 for me. Questing for 1's a bit odd. And the fact that it can return itself to its hand, I don't like. I get why for power level you don't want this to be a 3/4, I'd imagine, but it should probably say another chosen character. Just because it's a little bit messy when you can bounce itself a bunch, and I don't like that part. But potentially really strong. Helps control the board, which Emerald has a problem doing typically against, kind of wide boards. Has Ward, so it's hard to really get rid of. And yeah, I think songs with Emerald are going to be more of a thing too. Maybe Amber Emerald songs. And this is going to be a key role player in that deck. 4.5 or 3.5 stars. Solid card. Can't wait to kind of build around, see what we can piece together. Singer 4 is pretty strong too. So yeah, I'm going to definitely build some decks with it to see where it goes. Tor, Florist. Stat line's kind of cute, but not really anything to be excited about. 2. We've really come to the point where stats aren't enough anymore. Yeah, we'll see. And remember, when I put the 2 different star ratings up, I mean 0.5 in between there. So moving right along, Zeus. So 3 cost, 0/5. When this character challenges another character, he gets strength equal to the strength of chosen character this turn. So it can copy the strength of anything in play. So if you play a big character on the front side, then let's just say you play after this, a 4/3. It can be a 4/5 challenging. I think that this card suffers a bit, with the card that protects it, giving it ward earlier. It makes it so that it's not going to just die to a Medusa the same way, and that card has ward itself. But this thing just being so easy to challenge into is kind of weird for Zeus, because he's high on Olympus, and like I get that he's throwing lightning bolts down. That's kind of where he gets his bolt of strength from something else there, but I'm not sold. Maybe there's a build around to it. It's inkable. It's a 2.5, 3. It's not great. We've seen 0 strength characters before, and none of them have been particularly great. All right, dodge. So inkable action. Chosen character gets ward and evasive until start of next turn. That's kind of cool. There's nothing really that's been too great to protect. I think if this was a song, it might be really good. As an action, I'm not sold on it. I'm giving it a 2.5 because it's hard to find the right situation for this one. The reason why if it was a song, I think it'd be a lot better is because one of the cards, or one of the decks from set 3 that really never took off that we all tried early on was the Bayou Beast combo. The Beast Relentless and Bayou with Sheriff Nottingham. That thing lets you essentially, every time you would quest, you would get 2 lore and also deal 1 damage to one's character. You get 2 lore per point of willpower on your opponent's side. And the biggest issue with that deck is that your beast never survived on turn 6, or they will rip cards out of your hand. You can never really make it all work. And if this is a song, you can play beast on turn 6 and then sing something like an Ursala to protect it for a turn so that it can't get killed by a spot removal effect. Even though that card's not vulnerable to a Medusa, the beast isn't, but it's also just hard to really justify building the rest of your deck around it in some ways. And I think that this as a song could have maybe pushed it there, but I'm interested to see if this can support any other type of deck to maybe have, your character that you just need to protect for a turn. And that's what you want to do with the card, and it gets there. But right now, not quite cost effective enough. I think maybe at 1 it would have been too much, but yeah. Banish, so make the potion. Banish chosen item or deal 2 damage to chosen damaged character. It's getting a 2. It's pretty flexible, and that's kind of why it's uninkable, because it's likely to have text in a lot of cases, but being uninkable is pretty rough. And again, you want your powerful cards to be inkables, not your flexible ones. I'd rather have my flexible cards be inkable than to be have modes, because functionally any type of card in the game that you get to play that is inkable has the hidden mode of just being an ink. So they're all modal to begin with, but this actually removes one of the modes. So even though it looks like it has 2 modes, it actually only has 2, or most cards that may be, World's Greatest Card of Mind has the ability of just being an ink. So that has 2 modes as well. So it's kind of a hidden 2 modes in most cards that are inkable, and this one just being uninkable isn't really adding more to what you can do with it. And yeah, maybe 2 in limited, probably not, but who knows? It's not really, I'm not really looking forward to it. Under the Sea. So one of the Sing Together cards, put all opposing characters, which I didn't realize it was opposing characters at first when I first read the card. I thought it was just characters, which didn't really make me want to play it with Kita too much. But as it stands, this is one of Emerald's way to really swing a board back. And if you shift to Kita and then use Kita plus another 3 Singer to sing this out, because 8's not too much when you consider what you can do, it's really a powerful effect that really can swing the board back together here. And I'm excited to try it out with Kita specifically, Amber Emerald, and see where we can go. I'm giving it a 3 stars. It's not getting higher, even though it has a potentially very high upside because it's uninkable, and that can be a bit harsh on deck building. But solid card. Gonna be going with it here, and excited to try it out. Ursula's Trickery. This is getting a 1.5. It'll probably replace itself. Each opponent can discard a card, each opponent doesn't draw a card. So 1 cost draw card is not really playable. I feel like, improvise maybe if you play Action Jackson, as someone mentioned there. It's hard to really have a Punisher card be good. Sure, they may discard a card, but that's only when they don't want you to draw a card. And giving your opponent decisions always not great. So even as uninkable, again, removing one of the decisions is pretty poor. So 1.5, maybe. We don't talk about Bruno. We're talking about it. Too bad. 5 cost Singer. Return something to their hand. So Mother Knows Best plus Sudden Chill on 1 card. Able to be sung with Ariel or anything else that has 5. Powerful card. 3.5 stars. It's not quite powerful enough to be a 4, I think. But 3.5 is where I'd put it. It is a very good role player. It is good for Emerald to have some removal. It kind of makes me scared a little bit of really early shifts in Emerald that kind of counter the opposing one. The opposing line. Say they play a 1-cost character and you have a 1-cost queen. You get to then shift into it and then bounce their thing and maybe discard something higher. It's hard to really say that this is going to be defining Emerald, but it is very powerful, and always being able to trigger Prince John is nice. Inkable is great. It's a very strong effect. I don't give it a 3.5 lightly. It's close to a 4, but I don't really want to give removal spells that are a little conditional 4. Costing 5 is a little bit high, but it is very strong. Like a Let It Go is a very similar power level to this, being unconditional. And there's always the chance in some cases where you just don't discard the card that you want to, and it's not great. I'm not saying this won't see play as a 4 of in a lot of decks. It's powerful. It's just not. It doesn't really win the game, and that's really what 4s and 5s are for. Cards that are just so dominant. It's gonna be in a lot of decks, but it's not omnipresent to where you just are gonna face this card every time you stand against Emerald. It's not that powerful an effect. It's not something you can't play around a little bit. It's not something you don't consider when playing it. It's also a song, which is hard to sometimes make work and set up because of Ursula. So it's not something you always proactively play. It's more of a reactive card. It's a strong card and it's gonna be really good, but yeah, solid card. Pretty high on it. Ink Caster. When you play this item, you can draw a card. Everything is inkable. I'm surprised this isn't a super rare. And the reason I'm surprised at it is because I feel like cards that change the fundamentals of the game are powerful enough to be warranting a higher rarity. That's how I like to express rarity, is how powerful a card feels. The fact that you just draw a card, I kind of hate, because I just hate that it's just a piece of material. I almost would like the card more in general if it just didn't have a draw card effect on it and it just was what it was, and because it's a powerful effect, right, making everything inkable. It's not necessarily worth a full card, but it's a cooler card, I think, if it doesn't draw a card. It's obviously better because it does, but it's a cooler card, I think, if it didn't, because you have to really want it to play with it in that case. But it is playable. It is very solid. It's going to change how a lot of decks work. I think it's also a 3.5. It's a solid role player. It's a deck filler. It goes right in there. It's going to be heavily played. Again, not having a 4 or higher rating doesn't mean it's bad. And rating isn't necessarily an expression of power level. It's more of how it feels to play against it and how it feels to play with it. And it's a very strong card, and it'll enable whole swaths of decks. because of this. You can play a deck with maybe like 20, 25 uninkables or something with this and Fishbone Quill in your deck because it just doesn't matter. And that changes how you can build your deck. And this is the role player. It's going to be great. It's a solid card, and looking forward to trying stuff with it. Signed Contract 3, medium 3. If sideboards were a thing in this game, it would be in a lot of Emerald sideboards. I don't even know if it's very good against songs in general, because half the time they don't mind if you draw a bunch of cards if they're just going to cast Whole New World. So, like, what's the real benefit of you? They play a couple small things and then all of a sudden just Whole New World, and you're like, well, I just got rid of those cards and you get to play them, and that's okay. It's not great, but it's fine, and yeah, it could be good. It's definitely situations where it's going to feel great, but it's not great to play. It's just okay. Inkable gets it the higher rating than a 2, but yeah. Vision Slab. So 3 cost, start of your turn. If your opponent has a damage character, gain a lore. Damage counters can't be removed. Also a solid 3. The damage counters can't be removed part is kind of interesting as kind of a sideboard functionality out of card. Out of some of the Rapunzel decks, and we talked with one of the Madrigals, the one that removes damage counters and draws cards. Really strong effect against those types of cards for sure. And the lore, the passive lore gives it the buff there, really. It can be good, and obviously it can just be ink when the time comes up. So it's fine. I think this is more playable than the signed contract, honestly. And it stops Popsicle from healing, healing scars that are trying to take out multiple things. It's fine there. It's coming together, and I think this is a reasonable card to include. It's just hard to really justify playing a card that may not do anything in some of your decks. So we'll see. All right, again, apologies for the locations here. They're not going to work with my deck viewer very much. So Hidden Cove is a 1 cost, 1 to move it to, 6 willpower location. It does not gain lore. And again, it only costs 1 to move stuff here, but it gives characters that are here +1/+1, essentially +1 strength, +1 willpower. That's pretty strong. I think this card's pretty good. I'm giving it a solid 3. It's definitely close to a 3.5 there. It doesn't gain lore, but this is really just an anthem effect, and it essentially you can pay 2 ink to give something +1/+1. You play it and then attach it to something and move other things there too. So that factor there, letting things trade, and also plays around Medusa, helps some of your 3-cost characters get above that stat line. It does fall prey to Maui. That's its bad thing, but it's kind of rough. It's kind of rough to justify something that doesn't gain lore in a lot of cases, but it does have a lot of effects, and I think this card can be played. Certainly decks that want to get around some of the damaging things like Steel, having 6 willpower, which again, not able to be shown right now. It's off the screen because the deck viewer I have can't do that properly because the cards aren't up and down. But solid card. I think this will see play. I'm excited to try things with it because the +1/+1 can be all the difference. I mean, we argue so much about things being hit by Medusa or not, and this thing gets those out of that range, and it's relatively cheap to do. One to play and then 1 to move things to. Yeah, solid card. More of, if you think of this in relation to other card games, maybe like an equipment. This is kind of like an equipment or some location. Then yeah, it could look really good. Excited to try it out. The last Emerald card here, Ursula's Garden. We saw that a while ago. 4 costs, 7 willpower. 2 to move things here, and it has 1 lore. If you have something exerted here, each opposing character gets -1 lore. So basically, it just forces your opponent to challenge this off the board before they can start questing effectively. Pretty big swing. This is going to be a 4.5 for me. I think it's going to make some number of maybe red-green decks viable with John Silver. Not John Silver, with what's his name right now? Jim Hawkins. I can speak. He's in front of me here. Jim Hawkins. Having something attached to this and being able to control the board is pretty nice. If you can stop things from challenging it there, it's pretty awesome. It basically reducing lore and making them have to send 7 strength into something is huge. Imagine an Emerald Mirror match, Emerald Steel. They don't have the biggest front side attack strength to get through. They don't. Curse Merfolk, Flynn, all these things don't challenge very well. They're meant to be challenged into, and if you're behind, or it can have this card just kind of become relevant with exerted characters, which they might not be able to challenge well either. Having to send 7 at this is pretty huge. So I think it's a solid card. Definitely worth considering here. One of the more playable locations since it survives a Maui hit too. But yeah, solid card. Looking forward to trying it out as well. Emerald got some really big inclusions this set. I think they got a lot of playable cards, really going to push Emerald decks forward too, not just be all about Ursula and Ursula, though they may still will be because 2-cost Ursula is very powerful against some of the more predominant cards being played in the format. We'll have to see how it all shakes out in the coming weeks. But yeah, thanks again, everyone. This has been Emerald here. Let's tune into the next color pair soon.